I'm back at Bushy Park in Tasmania. Last time I was here, we were looking at the hop breeding program and finding out about the process for breeding hops. Now it's a week out from harvest, and as you can see, everything is lush and the vines are bursting with hop cones. And we're finding out a little bit more about how Hop Products Australia decide when to harvest and the process that goes in the lead up to harvest time. Simon, we're 7 days out from harvest. You must be a busy man. What's keeping you busy?
Yeah, so a week out from harvest, we've got our lab and our sampling crews running around taking samples out of every paddock on the property on a weekly basis so that we can establish the sequence of maturity and get our harvest rolling with the right timing for the plants.
And what are they looking for? What are you sort of testing for?
The main indicator that we're looking for in terms of judging the maturity of the crop is the dry matter content of the cones. That'll mature, it'll come up from 17% to say 24-25% when the plants are ready to harvest, and we're looking for where every paddock is on that curve.
Is the drying the thing you're after, or is there something else that's indicative of?
It's really an indicator of how the maturity of the fruit is progressing. So we measure some other things in that pre-harvest sampling, but dry matter is the one that tells us the most about what the fruit is doing physiologically and what the plant is doing physiologically at that time of year.
So what's going on in the fruit at that time? What's developing?
So as the dry matter increases, the dry matter content of the cone increases from 18 to 25%, we'll see the alpha acid content increase up to a certain point, and then once the alpha acid content has maximised in the hop cones for any particular variety, the oil content will continue to increase for a period of time after that. We're really looking to get in and harvest the hops at a point after the maximum alpha acids, when the oil content has maximised before the cones start to physically deteriorate.
So are you looking for alpha acids, oils, or both?
So obviously it will depend on the product that we're aiming for with the particular hop variety. For a bittering hop, for example, we tend to focus primarily on alpha acid accumulation, but for hops into the craft brewing market where flavour is important, we have shifted our emphasis, if you like, onto harvesting hops at a high oil content.
How hard is it to time that correctly? Does it change rapidly?
In the run up to harvest, as we watch that dry matter increase, once the alpha acid accumulation is maximised, so the dry matter might be 23 or 24%, we'll then see the oil content increase from that point from, say, if we look at Galaxy, for example, it might increase from about 1.5 mils of oil up to 3 or 4 mils of oil on a sample collected from the field. And then you might have a window of 4 or 5 days after that where the hops will be absolutely primed to harvest at a high oil content before you get physical breakup of the cones.
Do all of the varieties come on at once, or is there a sequence to them?
The different hop varieties that we grow at Bushy Park are nicely sequenced across our harvest window in Tasmania. So we have Helga and Cascade at the start of March, running into Willamette, Enigma in summer, and then Ella, Super Pride and Galaxy at the end of March. And in Victoria, where they have a more compressed season, it's a little more complicated than that. We actually have to manage the harvest a little differently.
What drives the difference between Bushy Park and Rostrevor?
It's primarily down to day length. So the maximum summer day length at Rostrevor is an hour to an hour and a half shorter than the maximum summer day length here in Tasmania. Rostrevor's at 36 degrees south of the equator, and we're at 42 here, so we get much longer summer days. And hops are very day length sensitive, and part of their maturity cycle is driven by changes in day length.
So is there a difference between, say, Galaxy that's grown here in Bushy Park and Galaxy that's grown in Rostrevor?
So there's a difference in terms of the date of harvest, but in terms of the actual brewing characteristics of the variety, we think that when you are controlling the way that you grow the plants, controlling the maturity of the fruit at the point at which you harvest it, and you're controlling the post-harvest, so the kilning and the packaging processes, there should really not be much of a difference in the final product.
So from what you're saying, it doesn't sound like you're a believer in terroir.
I don't like the idea of the soil chemistry or the microclimate having an influence on the flavour differences that a brewer might perceive. I think if you can get your head around the particular harvest time in terms relative to what the variety is, so at what point in the dry matter curve does a grower harvest their hops, And then the other thing that's really important is all the post-harvest processing, so the kilning parameters and the bale pressing, chilling bales, freight, and then whether it's processed, whether it's sold as bales into a big processing group or whether it's processed on site by a farmer. Any of those changes in that process can have a massive influence on the flavour outcome for a brewer.
Is that because the handling of the time at which you harvest hops and the way you handle them immediately post-harvest affects what the brewer gets down the track?
Definitely. The flavour chemistry in hop is really dynamic. It changes all the time. So every little thing that you do to a hop cone changes to some extent the flavour outcome for a brewer. So by being able to control that post-harvest processing, we can, controlling the harvest maturity and the post-harvest processing.
And that's quite unique for HPA in Australia because you have that full chain from the breeding program to the packaging and pelletising and getting it to the brewers. Is that something that happens elsewhere in the world?
It's something that I think is fairly unique to HPA here in Australia, the ability to grow a reasonably significant acreage, process it through some intensive infrastructure, and then have the whole crop packaged and ready to distribute to brewers in a very short period of time. It gives us the ability to control so many factors on an annual cycle and within a seasonal cycle, that we think it allows us to produce a product that is quite different to most of the other hop producers around the world.
And that lets you, over the picking window, the harvesting window that you've got here, control much more when you're getting the crops off. I guess if you're elsewhere in the world where there's 70 or 80 farmers who have all got their own individual on-field practices, that can lead to some variability even between varieties.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so the same variety on a lot of different sites will be produced to a sort of a different flavour quality, if you like. So that ability for us to breed a hop and introduce it into our production system in a particular harvest window and manage the acreage and then manage the harvest and manage the post-harvest processing it gives us a lot of power.
Well, it sounds like you've got a very busy 3 months ahead, so I'd best let you get on with it. But thank you very much for hosting us down at Bushy Park.
Thank you, Matt. It's going to be good fun.